Hey folks, this is Shetz. We're going to pick up where we left off, and we must remember, where are the trig values positive? Here in the first quadrant, all of them are. Just the sine in the second, just the tangent in the third, and just the cosine in the fourth. That is where those trig values are positive. So when I look at this here, I have, where is the sine positive? That would be in those two quadrants. So that would be quadrant 1 and 2. Next it says, where is the tangent positive? That would be in these two quadrants, 1 and 3. And now, which ones of these repeat? Well, they both have an angle, quadrant 1, therefore this will occur in quadrant 1. Really simple to do, but we must remember where our trig values are positive. Okay, let's go on to problem 2. Now we have, as you can see right here, where is the cosine negative? Well, if it's positive in these two quadrants, it must be negative in those two quadrants. So, that would be negative in these two quadrants here. So that would be quadrants 2 and 3. Great. Now, we have, where is the tangent negative? Well, if it's positive in these two, it must be negative in those two. 2 and 4. So let's do that. And now we have what? Which one repeats? Here's quadrant 2 and quadrant 2. So this angle would occur in quadrant 2. Great. Let's go on to our next problem now. What do we have? We have the secant. Well, that's a reciprocal of cosine. Where is it positive? That would be in these two quadrants. And that would be in quadrants 1 and 4. And now this says here, let me get rid of this. We'll just get him off to the side. Okay, now so let's start with 3 again. This is the reciprocal of cosine. Where is it positive? Cosine is positive here, and that would be 1 and 4. So my mistake, that should be 1 and 4. Great, that's a cosine. And now we have, where is the sine negative? Well, wait a second. Sine is positive here, so it's got to be negative in 3 and 4. All right, so let me write that. 3 and 4. And which one repeats? Yes, that'll be in quadrant 4. So this angle will lie in quadrant 4. And we go to the last one over there. The last one we have, the cosecant. Where is it positive? Well, that's a reciprocal of sine, so it's both of these right there. That would be in quadrants 1 and 2. So let me write that in there. Quadrants 1 and 2. And this is the cotangent. That is the reciprocal of tangent. And this says negative right there. Well, if it's positive in these two quadrants, it must be negative in those two quadrants. And that will be quadrants 2 and 4. So then we ask ourselves, which one repeats? Quadrant 2. So this angle, given these conditions, will lie in quadrant 2. All right, let's scroll down. And again, we are remembering all students take calculus. This is where the trig functions are positive. Tangent of theta. Well, I know that it's positive in these two, so it must be in 2 or 4. So this would be 2 or 4. And notice this says, where is a cosine positive? That would be in these two, 1 and 4. Which one repeats? Well, that would be in quadrant 4. So all I have to do is drop an angle into quadrant 4 and go back up to the x-axis. Now my reference angle will be this angle right in here. And I also know that tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Well, opposite would be this side, and the adjacent would be this side. Therefore, I'm going over the adjacent side of 4 right there. That's going to be 4, and guess what? Going down is going to be -5. So the negative has to go with the 5. So my x happens to be 4. My y going down is 5 units. Well, when I use the Pythagorean theorem, I get 4 squared plus -5 squared is equal to c squared, or my radius. So let's just make that my r, my radius. That will give us a 16 plus 25 equals r squared. Therefore, taking the square root of both sides, we get an r of the square root of 41. So r is the square root of 41. That happens to be our radius right here, the square root of 41. Okay, well, we know this is in quadrant. Let me just scroll down a bit. A little bit more. We know this is in quadrant 4. And now the sign is opposite, which is -5, over our hypotenuse or radius, which is the square root of 41. Now we have to rationalize. And notice what we get. -5 square roots of 41 all over 41. That is our sine. Cosine will be the adjacent piece over our hypotenuse. And let me just label this as hypotenuse in purple. And what do we get? We get a 4 over the square root of 41, which, when you rationalize, will equal 4 root 41 all over 41. And this was a tougher problem because we had to use Pythagorean theorem to find our hypotenuse. And finally, the tangent. Well, they did give us the tangent way back up here, and that's a -5/4. So here we go, -5 over 4. To get these three, all you have to do is flip. Well, when I flip this, I get a -4/5. When I flip this, and I'm going to look right here, don't flip our answer, look here, square root of 41 over 4, then we don't have to do any rationalization. You would have if you flipped this guy. Okay. And finally, when we flip this guy, we get square root of 41 over a -5. I'll put the negative in the numerator. And if you notice right here, we're in the 4th quadrant. Both of these are positive. The rest, everything else is negative. And that does make sense with our trig values of where they're positive. Okay, this was a pretty tough one only because you had to find out the square root of 41. You had to find out the hypotenuse. Okay, let's go over to our next problem. This says a cosine is negative. Well, it's not in these two quadrants. It's got to be in 2 or 3. So quadrant 2 or quadrant 3 is where my cosine is negative. And where is my sine negative? Well, it's positive up here, so it must be negative in 3 and 4. 3 and 4. Which one repeats? The 3. So, notice right here, I'll circle them. There's the 3 repeating. So I need to draw this angle in quadrant 3. Always drop back a perpendicular to the x-axis. Here is my reference angle right in there. There's my reference angle. And I know with cosine, what's it say? The cosine is the adjacent over hypotenuse. Hey, guess what? I know my hypotenuse is 17. And my adjacent side right here has to be the negative 15. There's negative 15 going to the left. And 17 is my hypotenuse. Now, I was nice to you this time because this is a triple and that is an 8. But notice it's an 8 in the 3rd quadrant going down. So guess what? That's got to be a negative. And I don't even need to use my Pythagorean theorem here. We are in quadrant 3, right there. And now let me scroll down so we can finish this problem up. We better label our triangle. There's my reference angle. This becomes opposite. This becomes the adjacent. And here is our hypotenuse. So when we do the sine, we're going to get sine is what? Opposite over hypotenuse. That's a negative 8 over 17. Cosine is the adjacent over hypotenuse. Negative 15 over 17. And now my tangent, negative 8 over negative 15, which is 8/15. Again, just the tangent is positive in the 3rd quadrant. Notice negative, negative, and positive. To get these 3, folks, all we have to do is flip them. And we have a negative 17 over 15, and finally 15 over 8. There you go, folks. Hope you like it. Thanks.